Welcome to the Reinvent Your Life podcast, the show that talks about why we do what we do and how we can do it better.
Welcome to the Reinvent Your Life podcast. My name is Chaz Molesky, and today we have an awesome episode. We are talking about stories today, and stories have the ability to literally change your life in an instant if you have the ability to use them in the correct way. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's why we're going to talk about how they can be changed and why they're so important. But first, I want to give a little disclaimer. The stories I'm talking about are not stories you'll find in a book. They're not stories that you can read online. The stories I'm talking about are the stories that you tell yourself that frame your life or that shape certain areas of your life. Some people, this shapes everything around you. You come up with multiple stories for multiple things. Some people, stories are just stories, and you have them that sometimes you believe and sometimes you don't. It really depends. Stories can vary significantly, but I'm going to start this off with a story of my own that I had for a long time, and it took a while to break this story. But when I first started out as a coach, one of the biggest things I wanted to do is I wanted to help a lot of people all at once. See, I grew up studying and being under the influence of speakers, great speakers of the day, the Tony Robbinses or the Rob Dell Jr.'s and those that are just on these big stages talking about how to change your life and how to do all these amazing things. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So when I first started out, I remember I had a speaking gig. I spoke to, I think it was 3 people, and that's it, right? And I spoke to 3 people, and I was all excited to do it. And when I got up there, I did it. I gave it my best, but I was still nervous. I was still concerned about what I was going to say, if I was going to say the wrong things and how it would go over. And I remember I wasn't as sharp as I could have been. And I remember leaving thinking, all right, I had 3 people, right? And I was hoping to get a client out of those 3 people. And I didn't. None of them actually even contacted me after that. I had no way of following up with them. I did a lot of things wrong. But the story I created from that was, I'm not a good public speaker. And that crushed me because that was one of the things that I wanted to do. And I have this example where I'm speaking to 3 people. Now I know, obviously, you need to cast a bigger net, right? You need either a targeted crowd or a bigger crowd to really hear your message and take some action. But I was expecting these 3 people to be so radically changed by the things that I was talking about that they were actually going to move forward with coaching with me, and I was basing everything on that. Well, since that didn't happen, my story was that I'm just not a good speaker. Maybe speaking wasn't in my future. Maybe I should look into something else. And I felt so demoralized by that. I felt so just kicked down. And, it took a big toll on me. But here's the thing that happened. That story that I created from that was that I'm not a good speaker filtered out into every other speaking opportunity that I was presented with along the course of my career. So I remember I was presented with a few conferences. They weren't that big, but they were larger than I spoke, to 3 people. I was invited to speak for a panel of entrepreneurs that were all wildly more successful than me, which really intimidated me because I was thinking, man, here's these people that are already established. They're amazing in their business. And I'm nobody right now, right? What do I have to offer these people? So I had these stories in my head of why I couldn't do it. I didn't have any stories of why I could. I wasn't cultivating any of that. It was all the reasons that I couldn't. So ultimately, what ended up happening is I needed to create a new story around this. If I really, truly wanted to do it, I had to find a more empowering story to actually propel me forward in this career. Well, I remember I was presented with an opportunity to speak for a group of teachers. I believe the total was about 60 teachers. They were all different levels, high-level professors to your basic first, second grade teachers. And I really was excited about the opportunity because when I looked at the itinerary of what was going on, I had seen a couple things. First off, the person that was hiring me to do this was one of the teachers that was going to be in attendance. She was one of the ones that was helping setting it up. And she hated it. She hated the event, and they do it every other year, I believe it was, or something like that. It's this big summit. And she hated going to it because the content, the material that's in there is just so dry. And I don't want to take anything away from them. It's important that they learn certain things, but the content was just, that droning, boring content of sitting there learning things that you really don't feel like listening to. They're not exciting topics. It's like data entry and how to grade tests faster and like these things. Like, yes, they're applicable and they're helpful, but right? There's nothing really lighting them up. So that's what fired me up. I was like, I can come in here. I can kick the doors wide open with this. We could do an amazing hour session of just talking about patterns and how it influences your life and how to change certain things you don't like about yourself. I had all these ideas running through my head, right? So it got me excited. But in order to do it, I had to get over my story that I wasn't a good public speaker. I had to believe that I was going to crush this. I was going to do amazing, and I was going to deliver an incredible service. So when the day finally came, I remember I prepped for like 2 weeks. I had a whole PowerPoint presentation. I figured everything out. I did so many practice runs in my room, just talking to the walls. And what I was doing was I was changing my story every time. I was preparing myself mentally. And finally, when I went in there on the day of, I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot, telling myself, I'm an amazing public speaker. I'm going to deliver at such a high level. These teachers are going to walk out of here feeling like their lives were just blown apart and changed in the best ways possible. And I remember just telling myself that and feeding myself that belief. Well, let me tell you, I went in there and had, still to this day, I believe it is one of the best speaking engagements I've ever had. I remember I had this is the coolest thing. It was just very humbling for me. And I love hearing this type of stuff because A, it reinforces that all the time and effort that I put into doing this, it really works and it really helps. But B, it's that I'm really truly helping people. So I had a psychologist come up to me and she told me after that speaking session that I had a better grasp on psychology than most of the graduate professors that she knew. And I was, I believe, 23 at the time, 24. And I mean, that floored me. I was so humbled and excited, but I could have never gotten to that point. And let me tell you something, that strengthened my story of that I'm a great speaker, I'm a great coach. That strengthened it so much, but I would have never been able to get that if I didn't actually feed myself a better story. And to this day, I now believe that all of that is true, that I really am an amazing speaker. And it's helped me in so many of my speaking engagements moving forward to really commit and deliver at such a high level. But the reason I'm telling you that story, not to spend time on me or brag about me, the reason I'm telling you that is because right now, there's something in your life. There is an area in your life where you have a negative, unfulfilling story. And let me tell you something, the story you tell yourself will define that aspect of your life. So if the story you're telling yourself is one of I can't, or I'm not, or I will never, then guess what? You're going to be right. If you can change your story, you can change your entire life, but you have to figure out what story is worth changing. And every one of you listening right now has some area of your life where you have an unempowering story, an uninspiring story that's leading you to an uninspired life. Every one of you listening. And it could be something small or it could be something massive. And whatever that is, you know what it is. Inherently, you can tell what that thing is. And it all comes down to the story that you're telling yourself about that thing. So I want you to break down your story. When did the story start? Why do the elements of the story always come back to you? What aspects of that story can you change to make it more empowering? What are some other things you can go back to and actually reference that prove your uninspiring story incorrect? So there's going to be some examples. You're going to go back. Let's say this is a very basic example, but say you feel like you can't do something. Let's say you're trying to make a certain amount of money, right? And you think you're not worth it, or I can't make that money. I've never made that money before. I'm not good enough for that money. I can't make that money, right? I just won't be successful. Well, have you ever been successful before? Now, a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, I've been successful before, but it's not with money. That's not the point. You have to draw on positive references of your ability to do something. If you're looking for success, you have to reference the moments that you've been successful. That is crucial to the actual success of it. So what I want you to do, I want you to take those elements, I want you to break down your uninspiring story, and I want you to recreate that story with true beliefs, things that are really true. Sure, okay, we'll use the money example. If you're not making a certain amount of money, when have you succeeded in the past at something you could never do previously? And you can take this back to even the most basic things. If you can swim underwater, but you never knew how to swim underwater before, well, guess what? You figured it out. You were successful. If you can tie your shoes right now, and you couldn't tie your shoes at one point in your life, guess what? You were successful. This is how these things work. It's silly. I get it. But let me tell you, it works. All right. So you need to start creating a new story. And even if you don't have those previous examples to pull from, Use your future vision. Use what you want, all right? Use that law of focus. If you haven't listened to the law of focus episode, go back, listen to the law of focus. Use your focus to pull new references to create a better story. So focus on the things that you want. I want to be rich. I want to have a huge house. I want to be able to give back to the world. I want to have financial freedom so I can spend time with my family. Okay, well then the new story is I've worked so hard up to this point that I am so deserving of financial freedom that I am going to work just a little bit harder to get it, and no one's going to stop me. That's an empowering story. That is an awesome story. And the more you can stay congruent with that story, the more likely it is to come true because you're going to naturally work your way towards it. So, as always, take this information, leave this podcast, put this stuff into play, all right? Apply the knowledge that you just learned, and you will start to see the changes, all right? As always, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to this podcast. If you know people that will benefit from this information, once again, please send this to them, refer this to them, help them out. There's somebody out there that needs to hear this message, and I need your help to spread it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Reinvent Your Life podcast. Now go out and apply what you just heard to start your reinvention. Please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with those that need it most.